And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the Top Dog Talk podcast. I'm your host, Harrison Reno. Alongside me, co-host Dan Kiley. Dan, how are you doing on this Thursday evening?
It is a great day to be alive. We are a couple of days away from the biggest game of the year for the Georgia Bulldogs. We've been waiting for this game all year long. We didn't really have that action-packed schedule. We had some pretty good games along the way, but I think we are at the stage of fanhood at the University of Georgia right now, where it's a one-game season. This is something that Urban Meyer's talked about, Nick Saban's talked about for a long time, where it's almost like the season doesn't even matter anymore. It's the postseason because that's where you're headed. That's where you want to be. And by God, that's where we are.
Absolutely. You said it best right there. It's a one-game season. Georgia wins, they're in. You get at least one more game for the rest of your season. So really important matchup. Let's dive straight into hot topics. We had some coaching hires since we last spoke. Obviously, Texas A&M hired Mike Elko, the Duke coach, but there was a little controversy there, Dan. It kind of blew up all within the span of 24 hours. First reported Mike Stoops, the Kentucky head coach, was going to be their head coach, and then some backlash, social media backlash from looked like probably fans, probably some boosters, maybe behind the scenes, kind of influenced that hire, and they came out later and said, no, he's not our head coach, and they came back the next day and said, yeah, we got our guy, it's Mike Elko. And then he had a whole viral moment, which you can go find on Twitter. Dan, which brings us to the question of, first, should fans or players influence the decisions of a university when it comes to hiring a head coach? Granted, the reason I ask this is because we are in the NIL and the transfer portal era. What does Dan Kiley say? This is a two-part question.
Well, the correct answer is no, they shouldn't have any say and they shouldn't sway it one way or another because fans don't know as much as the people in the room. At least that's what you hope. And that's why you pay those people to make, that big money to make those decisions. I don't have a lot of faith in athletic directors to begin with because they're not even good enough to hire their own people. They have to go hire a search firm because they can't figure out who to hire. So I'm really, like I said, the correct answer should be no, that they shouldn't have any influence. But yes, they do, because obviously they're the ones that support and fund them basically. So they're going to have their way. But, we've seen this very recently. The University of Tennessee, they were going to hire Greg Schiano. I think that was his name, right? He was the Rutgers coach. And they were going to hire him, and the fans said no, and then they ended up getting Jeremy Pruitt, right? Yep. And that didn't work out real well for them. Now, in the case of Texas A&M, I think Stoops would have been a good hire, a solid hire. To me, Mike Stoops is a really solid football coach. Like you're not going to have a miserable season as long as you have the everything around him, right? That he needs, the support that he needs. He's going to produce. He's going to have good seasons. At this point, he's not shown the ability to be a championship level coach, but at Kentucky, has he really had the resources? But my overall point in this situation is it may have worked out well for them because I honestly didn't know much about Mike Elko coming into this season, but seeing what he's been able to do at Duke and talking to some kids that have talked to him because he's been recruiting some kids that I do know, and they all like him a lot. So this may actually work out for Texas A&M really, really well. But at the end of the day, the fans and the boosters, they shouldn't have direct influence over who these people hire, right? Because those people in that position are paid to make those decisions, and they should be able to get it right. But, like at the University of Georgia, I trust our administration to get it right.
Yeah. For me, obviously, with players, I don't think players should have a say. Because in the first, in Texas A&M situation, the players are part of the problem in what's gotten them into this position. So why give the people who are part of the problem and who kind of helped get that guy fired a chance to pick their new coach? That doesn't make sense. If I'm a bad employee and Dan's my boss and I get Dan fired, they're going to let me pick my, the guy that's going to replace Dan? Heck no. They're going to get me out of there.
You're not in the workforce yet. You're not in the workforce yet, but that's how it works.
Yeah. So that's how that just doesn't make sense here. Now, as for fans, it is a PR business, Dan, especially when it comes to sports. That's what it's all about because you want good PR. Schiano, like you said, Tennessee got rid of him, canned that hire, and got Jeremy Pruitt because the fans didn't like it. And I understand that. I don't think that you should say, okay, the fans want this guy, so we're going to hire this guy and blindly trust him. But there is an important element of we need our fan base behind us because, like you said, They come to games. They contribute to our success. They give us money and all that. You want the fans on your side, but no, you shouldn't can the hire that you had 100% belief in because your fans are rioting. I'm not here for that. Now, Dan, next question. How much influence should boosters influence the decisions in this case?
Well, again, the answer should be none, but that's not real life. That's not true. That's not how this works. Is that these guys um, fund the program? They are the Willy Wonka. They are the ones that produce the chocolate. It's a especially in the NIL world where you have to come up with that money to buy your players now. Unfortunately, man, that's just the way business is, Harrison. Like I don't see any way around it to where whoever's pumping money into that school is not going to have a big say in it. And I mean, the thing about it is, for the most part, the names, right? Like the Yellowwood guy down at Auburn, big guy. He controls. I can't remember his name. And I don't know why. But then T Boone Pickens out at Oklahoma State used to just absolutely run everything out there. You got the guy down at LSU. Texas has got a couple big oil tycoons that just run that school. I mean, it is what it is. I've never had a name attached to Georgia though. I know a lot of different people, but I've never heard a name attached to Georgia like this is the guy that runs everything. Have you ever heard who's the booster at Georgia that runs everything? I don't know.
I have no clue. I have not heard of one. I know they had some at Bama back before Nick Saban. That Saban said, "Nah, you got to go," which is funny because he has the power, and that was before he even kind of proved himself over there in Bama. He got him out of there. So I haven't heard of one. I'm sure there are people. I think it's probably more behind the scenes though. You don't have people coming out and saying things. Now, granted, Kirby Smart runs the program, has full control of that program. Everything goes by what he says. But I'm with you on this. I don't think they should. But obviously, with the way they contribute money, they obviously basically pay for influence. Like that's what they are. They give you money in exchange for having some influence, having some benefits. One of those is being able to say, hey, I kind of want this guy. But should you 100% live and die by what they say? No, sir. Not in my opinion. Dan, the hire here for me is interesting because I think you and I both agree. When Georgia fired Mark Richt back in 2015, it was a risky business, a risky deal because the fact you're getting rid of a coach that averaged 10 winning seasons and you're going for a new unproven head coach. I think that's what A&M's they're not a 10-win program right now in the last decade. They've only had 2 10-win seasons since I want to say 2000. And they actually have just as many 10-win seasons as Georgia Tech, I believe, dating back to then. Just to give you perspective on that, but this isn't a flashy hire for me at all. I think they settled a bit for probably I would say a B tier.
I wouldn't go that far, man. I really think Mike Elko's going to be a good football coach, but I'll let you continue your point. But I think settling that's kind of harsh.
Too extreme?
Yeah, I mean, listen, you are not the king of hot takes, but I think Elko's a really good football coach.
I don't doubt him. I just don't think he's the guy that's going to get them where they want to. That's my thing. I see it kind of as a bridge deal right here. Like, because I think they pulled the trigger at the wrong time. I get it. Jimbo had to go. I understand that. But from a coaching market perspective, Dan Lanning wasn't going to leave Oregon at this point. Well, just the timing of it was off.
Let me redirect you real quick right here. So let me ask you a question. Do you think that Elko can do for Texas A&M what Mark Richt did for Georgia? Where, listen, Georgia was never a disaster of a program. They weren't as successful as they should have been. They were kind of a sleeping giant. Mark Richt reestablished the culture, reset everything. He just reset everything. And then he built, fundamentally built it up. Now, granted, he was here for 15 years. Okay. So I'm not saying Elko's going to be there for 15 years, but I'm saying, do you think he is the type of coach that can go to Texas A&M, rebuild everything, recreate the culture to a healthy environment, get them all going in the right direction to where maybe a young upstart guy who can put them over the top could come in and continue it? I mean, to me, Elko is stability and just a hard-nosed football coach that's going to get wins.
I can buy that. If that's the vision here, that we think this guy's going to get us to being a 10-win a season program, I'm buying it. Like, I will buy that stock because where they've been recently, they've been a proverbial 8-win, 7-win football program with the occasional, 9-win season. But they've never won the SEC since they've been here, and that's not good enough, obviously, with all the money they have there over there at Texas A&M. Dan, let's talk medical marvels. Aaron Rodgers, I think it's 100 days post-surgery. I forget exactly
79.
79 days post-surgery Achilles tear, is being activated off the injured reserve. 21 days.
He was practicing yesterday,
which is insane to me. Absolutely. We talked
Did
about
you
it
see
last
the video?
night. I did, yes. It's absolutely insane to me what he's been doing.
Hell?
I mean, it's Achilles tear. This is like you said it. Yeah, you said it last night when we talked. This is a what?
It's like a 9 to 12 month injury,
and he's back already.
I mean, like Klay Thompson missed almost 2 full years. Kevin Durant missed over a year, and you're talking about elite of the elite guys who are much younger than he is. So we are to holy hell. I mean, he says it's because of his holistic medicine and his yoga and his meditation and stuff. Now, they did do the tightrope surgery like they did with Brock Bowers. They did it with his Achilles. They're also doing it with ACL tears now. Cooper, my son's friend, had it done, and he's way ahead in rehab. So obviously that tether stuff really, really works. It gives it something, some structure there. But oh my God, 79 days past surgery, and the guy's back there dropping back, pushing off his foot. Like when I saw the video, I was like, okay, he's gonna stand there and throw the football and not do it. The son bitch was moving around. I'm like, oh my God. It blows my mind. But the question is modern marvel. So we're not gonna do him, right? To me, it was Adrian Peterson. Adrian Peterson came back from that ACL tear, and it was a bad injury. And there are a lot of injuries that these guys came back from. But Adrian Peterson came back, and then 9 times out of 10, when a guy comes back from a knee injury, a tear like that, a lot of times it's that first year that they come back, they're mid. I mean, they're just average as grits. They don't move the same. And eventually they can get better. Remember when Nick Chubb came back from that horrific injury that he had, it took him a year and a half to really kind of get back to full speed to where he were like, oh, wow, that's the Nick Chubb we remember. And we hope that happens again. Adrian Peterson came back 6 months from a complete ACL tear and an MCL tear and a PCL tear and was whooping people's ass and was almost a league MVP. I think he was the league MVP. I know he was comeback player of the year, but he was incredible. Jonathan's saying Paul George. I don't remember how fast Paul George came back. Did he come back really fast, Jonathan? Just go ahead and let us know. But yeah, for me, it's Adrian Peterson because of how quickly he came back. It was like 6 months post-surgery. And then also the fact that he was the most dominant running back the minute he came back in. You don't see that. I think Aaron Rodgers' story is going to surpass that. But to you, who is it?
I was going to go with Paul George. Great take there. Now, I don't know if I think Paul George kind of elevated himself post-injury, played it, amazingly. Post-injury did pretty well considering. I don't remember how quickly he came back, but that is a gruesome injury. If I had that injury, I don't know if I would have wanted to walk how dangerous. I mean, how it was grueling to see what happened to him. Gurley's another one. The fact that Gurley went on to have 3 really good seasons, like all pro seasons in the league, after, again, pretty nasty ACL tear. I don't know if he's in the same category as Adrian Peterson because it obviously – I don't know. I mean, did Gurley – is he in that same conversation? Because there is a little bit of a jump there.
Yeah, I don't know with Gurley because he wasn't way ahead of rehab. And I say way ahead of rehab. George Pickens, I don't include because he was out for like the whole freaking year with an ankle sprain. But
whoa! He had the ACL tear. A.D. Mitchell was out with it.
Oh yeah, ankle. Sorry. You're right. I'm 100% wrong. Oh! Alex Smith, dude, almost lost his freaking leg. Alex Smith almost lost his freaking leg. He had like 38 to 40 surgeries. They said he would never walk again. My man started an NFL game. Now, he was not good when he came back, and thankfully he went ahead and retired again. But they said this man would never walk, and he started an NFL football game. Bruh. And then Yeah, I mean, there's some really good stories about guys that came back. Oh, and then T.O. breaking his leg and then playing in the Super Bowl with a broken leg. Come
Oh,
on, dude. Come on. It,
oh,
and then back in the day, there was a guy, middle linebacker, Jack Tatum, I want to say his name was. He played the whole second half with a broken leg, and they took sticks and they put it on his femur and taped it together so he could play, or not femur, the tibia, and they taped it up so he could play the second half. I mean, that's just crazy.
I got one real quick. Last
Oh,
one, and we'll
Emmitt
move
Smith?
on. No, Peyton Manning from the neck.
Yeah.
Peyton Manning came back, had a really good year. Arguably, still probably the top 3 quarterback when he came back after injury. Went to Denver, a new place, new environment, new playbook, and won a Super Bowl within, I think, 2 or 3 years there. Won a Super Bowl. Incredible, incredible recovery. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of them. I hope in a few years, Dan, that DeMar Hamlin goes into this category of, man, he's playing at a really high level. He hasn't played yet to this extent at that high level post injury, but that's just
They won't let
because he's
that
in
man
the
play.
second round.
I'm confused by that whole thing. They don't ever let that guy play. And then, like, have you guys seen? I saw the funniest video on TikTok the other day. It was, have you ever seen the Key and Peele sketch where uh, the one guy he's talking, he's like a senator from Michigan. He's saying that, like, I don't care if you're white, black, orange, green, or whatever, or if you're gay, it's fine. So, like, they're showing, like, all the people, everything he says the gay person, and it shows the other one, and he's hiding, like, I'm not gay or whatever. He's like trying to hide. So they did that. They said DeMar Hamlin, every time somebody gets hurt in a game and Buffalo's playing, it says, like, DeMar Hamlin trying to, like, dodge the camera. Anyway, that's totally off topic.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he hasn't played yet, but he is in a loaded safety room, Poyer and Hyde. I mean, shoot, it's just amazing he's playing football at this point for me. With him and what he went through. Dan, I put this in here. I didn't talk to you about this, but it is a topic of discussion. Kirk Herbstreit. Never heard the dude cuss.
Dropping F-bombs on national television.
Yes. Yeah. And it was all centered around the college football playoff, and not because of what's going on in the rankings currently. It's just about the debate. 4 best teams, 4 most deserving. That's the debate. It feels like every year we have this debate. And here's my question, Dan. Have they ever got it right? Have they ever put the 4 best teams in the 10 years now that they've been doing this in the playoffs? Or has it always been the 4 most deserving? To me, last year, I thought they did a pretty good job. I thought they put probably the 4 best teams in the college football playoffs, according to what was going on at the time. Georgia was one of the best. Obviously, Michigan. Who else was in? Ohio
TCU
State,
is the
most
one
definitely. TCU's are arguably probably the worst, maybe not the best of the 4, considering all the close games they had. But who would you have put in over them? I know Bama fans would say they were one of the 4 best teams, but you had 2 losses.
Yep.
Trying to think who else. I think that may have been it. But TCU's obviously the lone one. I know people say FSU when they got, was it by Oregon they got killed by? I forget which year it was. FSU just absolutely got destroyed. Probably shouldn't have gone in. But I can't think of a year where they had the 4 best teams in. Can you, sir?
No, not off the top of my head. I can't think of where. I think there's always going to be that one team that gets in that shouldn't be in because of just where they're at. But I mean, this, like, I was listening and I try not to be influenced by everything that I hear. But I was listening today, and there's a very real scenario right now where the SEC doesn't have a team represented in the college football playoff. And, as Buck Bellew said today, that's absolutely absurd and laughable. He said, but there's a major SEC bias in that committee room. And if you go through who all was on the committee, which we're not going to do on the show because I'm not going to do that. But if you go through who's on the committee, there's nobody represented from the SEC. There's not really anybody represented from the South except for the guy who's the committee chair from NC State. I believe he's their athletic director. But there are 9 athletic directors on that board. There are 2 professors and 1 business person. And not one single person on that committee has ever coached a game of any sport. and they were all lawyers at some point. So they're not athletic. They don't know. Like as Buck Bellew said today on a show, they wouldn't know competitive football if it smacked them in the face. But like what you're gonna and like there's two real theories. And even in our chat, we don't all agree, right? I mean, because everybody has their own perspective, and that was Kirk Herbstreit's point last night. Is that who I feel is the best for, and who you feel is the best for? We're not going to always agree, and that's okay, right? But the argument that Joey Galloway was making the other day, and Greg McElroy was saying, and I think it was either Jonathan or Jeremiah in our chat said that if you don't include FSU and if you don't include Texas, then you're saying the regular season doesn't matter, right? But if you're saying the best 4 teams, and Joey Galloway was making a point of everything that you just told me Florida State did, they did with Jordan Travis. They don't have Jordan Travis, and they're not going to have Jordan Travis. They are not the same team. So if we're saying best 4, then Florida State cannot be included because you are no longer one of the best 4 teams in the country. Is that fair? And if you do that, to either Jonathan and Jeremiah's point, whoever it was that made it in the chat, you've just told me the regular season doesn't matter. I think you could make a clear argument that Alabama is one of the best 4 teams in the country. But does that mean you don't include Texas, who beat them? Now, I don't think anybody with a logical sense could say that Alabama is the exact same team today that they were when they lost that game. So there's a lot of different ways to look at it. I think the 4 best teams in the country are Michigan, Georgia, Alabama, and Texas. That's who I think the 4 best teams are. If you're going to do that, that's the 4 best teams. That is the teams, when I watch them, I'm like, oh, damn, that's a good football team. Texas, when they're healthy, that's a damn good football team, right? They have the lines, offensive, defensive line. They have playmakers. They have good secondary. And you can say the same thing for Alabama. You can say the same thing for Georgia. You can say the same thing for Michigan. I think Michigan might be the weakest of those 4 teams, but we don't know. We don't know because they've had a 1-game season to this point. But they did win it, and they looked good doing it. So, I don't think FSU could beat any one of those 3 teams. I don't think so. I think Oregon could probably beat one of them, maybe. I think Oregon might. That's another thing with the Pac-12 is you don't know because they play such a different brand of football. They don't typically come to the East Coast and whoop the hell out of the Southern teams. They just typically don't. I'm not saying they haven't. They just typically don't. I don't know. I'm like the jury's out on those 2 teams to me.
Absolutely. My thing is, I think I look at the rankings. My one problem with the rankings is that they have 6 through 8. Like Oregon has, of the 3 teams below them, has a worse strength of schedule than all of them. And they've lost their one big game of the year. I get it. They beat USC, who at the time may have been a quality team, but you lose to Washington, and somehow they start to get hot, but they haven't played exactly anybody. I know they blew out Oregon State, and that's I think their best win since losing to Washington earlier in the year. You look at Texas. Texas has won ever since they lost to OU. Not always been pretty, just because they've lost their quarterback, but they've remained in contention. They remain undefeated aside from the Oklahoma loss. Alabama's playing some good football at the moment. Like they've made for a great matchup with Georgia, and you could arguably say they're one of the best 4 teams in the country. Ohio State lost to Michigan, looked kind of impressive in the beforehand, but you lose your one game. To me, I don't think Oregon should be. I think it should be Texas, Bama, Oregon, Ohio State. I think that's how it should be. I don't think Oregon should be on the precipice of getting into the college football playoffs if they beat Washington, because Washington, I think, is going to be their only ranked win other than Oregon State. And I think when you look at the strength of schedule and their strength of record, it's not anything compared to what Alabama or Texas would have if they went out, in my opinion.
But so here's what they have: 1 loss, and that would avenge their 1 loss. My thing is the eyeball test, Harrison. When you look at the football team, do you not think Oregon's a good football team? Because that's ultimately that's all I care about. Like, look at the teams. Tell me, is that a good football team? Like, if you said
they are a good football team.
If you said Georgia versus Washington, who do you got?
I think Georgia wins that game. I think
easily.
Yes, of the 6 teams that could get into this playoffs, including Alabama is the hardest test for Georgia. I think on paper, and I think we'll see on Saturday, if Georgia can get by Alabama, I don't think there is a team in the nation that scares them. I mean, Michigan tries to play a physical brand of football. which Georgia excels at. And I get it. Georgia's given up some rushing yards this year more than they have in years past. But there's a difference between knowing a team's going to run on you and run crazy on you, opposed to the quarterback who we don't have scrambling on our scattering report breaks a 60-yard read option.
Michigan had a better rushing attack the first time we played them. And we now granted we had Jordan Davis and we had Carter. So we don't have those two things. They don't have that. But I think Georgia would welcome that Michigan game. I think I personally do not know a single Georgia fan that would be concerned by having to play Michigan.
I mean, Dan, what's the formula for being Georgia? You can rip it off off the top of your head.
Well, I don't know. It ain't been done in 30 games.
Hey, as we always say, to beat Georgia, you're going to have to be able to throw on them. And you have to throw a lot of yards on them. Well, because once you start throwing on Georgia, that opens up some chances. If you get Georgia cautious about getting beat over the top, it opens chances in the run game. Ohio State showed that a little bit last January. But, yeah, I mean, this is why college football is the way it is. I like it right now. I'm not here for the 12th team. I'm here for 8 teams. 8 teams would be fine. The drama would still be there, but 12 teams, we just totally eliminate the drama we have right here.
We just talked for 15 minutes on who's the best 4 teams. There's no conversation to be had if it's 12.
Absolutely.
I mean, because 13, 14, and 15 don't matter. Like, it doesn't even matter. Like, at that point, I could care less who you put in because they don't matter. But Jonathan nailed it right here. That's the best defensive line combo. I'm talking about you got guys in the NFL making plays. Aiden Hutchinson is killing people at Michigan or at Detroit, and they got bodied.
He got whooped by Jamar Sawyer, who was a 6th-round pick according to the NFL. He definitely ain't playing like one. I'll tell you that. He's playing like he should have been in the first round. But that's neither here nor there. Dan, Game of the Year candidate. Game of the Year candidate, Georgia versus Bama. Let's start it right where I think everybody's talking about it. The biggest matchup here in this game is Georgia's defense and how they contain Jalen Milroe. Because we've seen at his best, when you let him scramble, he's going to do damage to you. They've been comparisons to Tim Tebow. There have been comparisons to Cam Newton. I think I found the best comparison, Dan.
Sure.
And I think you may like this.
Okay.
You definitely remember watching him. I think Vince Young is more akin to the style of Jalen Milroe. I'm not saying he's as good as Vince Young, because Vince Young in his prime was good, but he's not as physical as Tim Tebow, and he's not as physical as Cam Newton. But he's probably faster than Vince, and I think that's kind of Vince's same play style. Vince was never a good passer in college. If you go look at his stats, wasn't tremendous, but he was a really good runner. And I think Milroe probably has him beat in terms of arm talent, but I think Vince Young is the matchup here if you compare the two.
I remember I remember it differently. I remember Vince Young throwing bombs all over the place. I think it's to me it's a Jalen Hurts combo. Like because Hurts can beat you with his arm, and Milroe wants to try to beat you with his arm. And like I have not watched every single Alabama game. Not every single one, but I have watched quite a few. And to me, it seems like he runs when it breaks down, not necessarily part of the running game. Right. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't think he runs just to run. And I think that's, let's just call a spade a spade. That's something the black quarterbacks have always struggled with in the game, is that they automatically, because of what they look like, get dubbed a running quarterback. And that's not always true. Just because they can run doesn't mean they're a running quarterback. And it doesn't mean that they're any less of a quarterback. So I think that's just kind of playing into the stigma that the national media has, is because he's a black quarterback that he's just going to run. Hell yeah, he can run. He's super fast, but he's looking to make plays downfield. And if you sleep on him, that's how he's going to kill you. And go look at the explosives. Jonathan did a great job. And if you've never followed him on Twitter or anything like that, go follow Dr. _J Will. He does a great job with his stat threads. And one of the things that he pointed out was explosive plays down the field. Georgia's done a really remarkable job in that game also. So there's not a big discrepancy, but I think that's the one part that people don't realize about Milroe, is that he's trying to hit that home run ball. And to your point, it does pose an issue for Georgia, because you have to be able to contain him, because he is capable of running, right? and he's very fast. I believe Nick Saban said he was the second fastest player on the team. I didn't hear who they said was the fastest, but I think Kool-Aid maybe. I'm not sure. But he is a dangerous weapon, and I'm sure Georgia is going. I mean, listen, you can say whatever you want to about Georgia. That defensive staff has to be the most well put together defensive staff I've ever seen in my entire life. You've got Muschamp, who was the standard for defensive coordinators, right? Then you have Kirby, who was under Nick Saban, and became the premier defensive coordinator. Then you've got Glenn Schumann, who does a fantastic job. You've got all three of those guys in the room. Plus, you got Fran Brown, who's now the head coach at Syracuse. If you don't think if anybody can put together a plan to stop this Alabama offense, if they can't do it, it can't be done.
I'm all here for great plans. It's really going to come down to and it's cliche, it's really going to come down to how it's executed, because that's my main thing. You saw the mush rush against Bryce Young didn't really work the first time around. They gave him way too much time. They sat back, and he kind of diced you up. Are you going to do that this time? And if so, I'm not really confident about that. I think you need to get after him. I think you need to send heat. We saw Georgia when Georgia had everything or with nothing to lose in the national championship game against Bryce Young. They sent the house over and over and over again and got after him. And it worked. It worked. You gave up a lot less explosives, and you had a lot of big plays going your way. I think there needs to be a balance there between outright containing them and sending the heat, because I think you do have some edge rushers that you can unlock. There's a lot of potential in that room. Damon Wilson has had flashes. I believe he was the number one edge rusher out of high school last year. Haven't seen much of Sam Mpimba yet. We've seen a little bit more of Marvin Jones Jr., and I'm still waiting for that breakout game from him. I think it's coming for him. Whether it's this week or if it's down the line, he will have it soon. He missed spring. I think that's kind of hurt him so far, is not being able to be there for the spring. Obviously, we talked about this in chat, Dan. I would love to see Mykel Williams off the edge with his hand in the dirt. You don't always have to have a guy stood up out there, and I'm sure they have a great rhyme and reason for the way they use them. But I really think that dude can take on some offensive tackles. I mean, we saw him win a rep against a first-round pick and Paris Johnson Jr. at Ohio State last year. I would love to see him get some more reps off that, that defensive end spot. Let him be off the edge, because I think with Alabama's offensive tackles, obviously they have a true freshman in Caden Proctor, who didn't have his best game against Texas, struggled, but obviously has matured. I would love to see him go up against a guy Caden Proctor is a projected first-round pick at tackle in the next few years. But Mykel Williams is also a projected first-round pick in the next few years. Let's see those guys go after it. Jalen Walker's another one. Obviously, we've seen flashes of him. He can play off the edge. He can play inside backer. I'm really excited to see how these guys play, Dan, because when you look at Bama's offense and you look at what Georgia has struggled with this year, they don't run the same flash and dash, dine and dash that Auburn and Georgia Tech does. Like, it's not the same running game. It's very different. Georgia and Alabama offensively play very, very similar. Very similar.
Yeah, the one thing that I always come back to with Georgia defensively is, you make a great point when you say it's going to come down to execution, right? And that was a hell of a comment by Jonathan. I didn't even put those two together. And I was reading his comment. I didn't understand it at first. I was like, yeah, he's 100% right. This Georgia defensive staff is going to rival that Falcon staff. Eventually one day, but like the only difference is these guys are not going to go on to be head coaches, because they've already, it's kind of like the reverse. It's like they're coming here to wind it down. But like that Cleveland Browns staff with Bill Belichick's staff up there, I mean, that's the most ridiculous shit I've ever seen in my life. I think like 9 guys on that team ended up being NFL or college head coaches. That's insane, bro. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. But my point is that, you said it's going to come down to execution. Well, the one thing is this coaching staff gets the most out of their players, in my opinion. And I'm not saying that Alabama doesn't, or I'm not saying that Oregon doesn't. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that this coaching staff seems to, whatever the button that needs to be pushed, they push it, right? And then we see the results. And I think that they're going to be really well prepared. But on the flip side of that, Alabama's defense, they better go to work this week, because this Georgia offense really is really, really good. This Georgia offense has been the strength of this football team. And, we were kind of chit-chatting in our group chat the other day, and I think the consensus across the board is we all feel like this is going to be a higher scoring game than your typical Georgia-Alabama football games. And we'll give our prediction at the end, but I think um, Alabama's defense is going to have the work cut out for them now because Georgia's got some weapons. Now, if Lad McConkey can't go, that changes things a little bit. I'm not going to say it's like dramatically shapes the game, but I think the one player that Georgia has to have in this football game, relatively healthy, is Lad McConkey. Or I'm sorry, is Brock Bowers. I just had Lad in my tongue. Is Brock Bowers, because he changes the game so dramatically. Even if he doesn't produce, it's that you have to pay attention to him. And then Kendall Milton has played phenomenal the last 3 games. And if Kendall Milton's stock is going up and it continues to climb and he gets better every single game, having that level of production at the running back is incredible, Harrison. And if we can get that along with the passing game, especially the play action passing game, Alabama's in for a long, long, long night defensively. I mean, yes, we have our work cut out for us too, but they have their work cut out for them, Harrison.
Let's not undersell it. Let's not undersell it both sides. Perfectly well said there. Dan, I know you brought up Lad and you say Brock. I'm with you there 100%. I said this back in the Florida game, and I'm going to say it again. Kirby, Bobo, if you're listening, you're not. But if you see this, if you're going to play Lad McConkey on a pitch count, and he's going to play just 30 snaps a game, every third down, throw him in there. Every third down, because that's where he's made his biggest impact. On the money downs, it felt like. This year, remember against Florida, had some really big catches. Obviously, who was it? Was it Ole Miss? He had that touchdown catch where they basically used Brock as a decoy. If we're saving Lad, if Lad's not 100% and can't go the full game, just put him on third downs. Because I think that's where he's made George a lot of money this year with Carson Beck, is a guy that will get open. And obviously that puts a lot of stress on the defense, because not only do they have to worry about Bowers, who's going to dictate probably their coverage, they're going to have they're going to have a safety over top of whoever's covering him. You're going to have a Lad on the opposite side, which is going to make it even more, difficult to defend. Not to mention Ra Thomas, if he's healthy.
To your point, if he's not healthy enough to play, then he can't play, right? Just the end. Can't play. If he's healthy enough to play, you play him. Mm-hmm. You can't save any bullets for this game because, as they say in Rocky, there is no tomorrow. I mean, if you lose this game, it's over. You're not getting in. So, I mean,
one game season.
Right. If you lose this game, nothing else matters. Like the bowl game doesn't matter. It doesn't mean anything. So don't save your bullets. And I don't think they would. So, I mean, it's probably ridiculous that we're even having the conversation.
Oh, no. But, it's not. I mean,
to your point on third down, Dominic Lovett has made quite a few big catches on third down.
Marcus Roseman as well.
That's exactly where I was going next. And then Dylan Bell has been, to me, Dylan Bell has been Hines Ward. And I know that is a rarefied air. And I'm not saying he's going to go be a Hall of Fame NFL football player. I'm just saying the role that Dylan Bell has played here at Georgia has reminded me of the role that Hines Ward would play. I mean, hell, every single game with Hines Ward, it was something different. They'd be like, hey, listen, we're going to need you to play left tackle today. He's like, done. They're like, hey, we're going to need you to play safety. Done. I mean, this man lined up at quarterback, wide receiver, running back, kick returner, kick coverage, all in the same game. Like, it's and Dylan Bell out here trying to do the same damn thing. So Dylan Bell is obviously we knew a little bit about him last year, and he made some plays last year, but he's really been a find for me this year, like where I'm like, wow, that guy's really made an impact, like a really positive impact. I think that Dominic Lovett has made an impact. Now, we heard that he would, right? They said that, we're going to really enjoy him. A lot of people said Georgia fans are going to enjoy that guy. But I think they got to have Ra on the field. I mean, he's the closest thing we have to what AD was. That big, strong guy to go over the top, make just a ridiculous. What's the word I'm looking for? The area that you can make a catch. The
catch radius.
Catch radius. His catch radius is enormous. He's just got to be healthy. So I'm really looking forward to this game, especially up front, because we've been talking all year. Well, at the beginning of the year, remember we had those conversations where we were a little bit concerned about the offensive line. It just didn't seem like they were coming together the way that we anticipated that they could with the talent level. They are playing at an elite level right now. And our defensive line, it's not what it was last year. I mean, that's not any disrespect to this football team to say that. Look at who
That's
we
a
lost.
high bar, you know?
Yeah. But they're getting the job done for the most part. I think not having JDJ is massive. CJ Allen's done a great job. Right. See, that's
But
right.
you have,
Right?
yeah.
Yeah.
You just have your rookie moments. You have your freshman moments
And
where
then,
you get caught in the wrong gap, or you
yeah,
overrun something, and it's a
or
big
get
play.
caught in
Like
the
that
wash.
happens.
I
Yeah.
mean, sometimes you just get caught in the wash. Like Kirby said in his press conference, he's like, we got 2 damn freshmen out there making 60% of our plays, like, playing 60% of our plays with Raylan Wilson and him. But like some guys are starting to pop at the right time. Like Story, Xavier Story, right? No, Smile Mondon making plays, and then you've got my guy, Junior, number 7.
Marvin Jones
Jr. Starting to make plays. Early in the season, it was like he was always that far, to me anyway, and I'm not an expert, but it always seemed like Marvin Jones Jr. was that far away from making a play. And then like every game that started getting a little bit closer. Now you're starting to see him make those plays. It's like the game's starting to slow down for him. And then that would be a nice little pass rush coming off the edge opposite of Michael. But we'll see. I'm just excited for the game. Well, I'm kind of nervous, but I'm excited.
Tyrann Dawkins, I got a few X factors, Dan. I think TID is one of them. Obviously
That's
we're
your
going to
guy.
need edge play. That is my guy. If I'm going to have a my guy list, TID, top of the leaderboard right there. Had a BS, and I mean BS roughing the passer call against Georgia Tech. That was horrible. That was horrible. And there's more than a few questionable calls. But hey, over here in this program, we try not to do that. If you want to get ref blame and just go watch a Tennessee program, I'm sure they'll give it to you. TID, Jalen Walker's another one. If you're gonna get behind, we need big game from the edge rushers. Georgia needs a big game from the edge rushers. I have extreme confidence that TID, if he's healthy, fully healthy and ready to go, he can make that his presence felt. Jalen Walker, I'm excited to see. Another guy, Dan, you mentioned him, Xavier Story. We talk about athletes on this team. We haven't seen much of him over recent weeks. It feels like I feel like I haven't noticed him. I don't even know if he's healthy at this point because I don't remember seeing him in these last few weeks. But if he is, that guy's a track athlete. That guy is an absolute athlete. I believe he ran, I want to say, over 20 miles per hour, or at least they posted it. Like, we're talking, this dude is something else. He's been playing inside backer for Georgia. If we're going to spy Jalen Milroe, that's a guy I want to see out there for sure, because I think he can track that down. Another guy would be Jalen Walker. Obviously, I think you need him off the edge. But Xavier Story, Dan, the one thing you kept talking about, and I'm getting off track here a little bit, about this defense was the speed. That was something you wanted to talk about this offseason, was how you've heard that people have been saying this is the fastest defense that Georgia's had. And, I mean, they haven't disappointed at times. I think the speed has been there. It's just about, is there range there? Are they getting to where they need to be to make plays?
To your point with the team speed, the only time I can remember just like the team speed not being there was on that Tennessee touchdown on the first down. Like, nobody could catch the guy, right? And that doesn't happen at Georgia. Like, we got some guys, right, who can run. So that running back from Tennessee had a rocket up his butt. He was gone. But Alabama's got some fast guys. Listen, in a game like this, I have to remind myself, I'm reminding you, I'm reminding our audience, and I'm reminding myself, more importantly, they're a really damn good football team. And guess what's going to happen? They're going to make plays. And we're going to give up plays. But we're going to make plays too. It's just at the end of the day, who's going to make more of them? And as Georgia fans, we haven't had a lot of competitive games. Well, not ones that should have been competitive. I mean, like, we had competitive games that you never actually thought you were going to lose. You're like, oh, crap, Georgia Tech's hanging
Georgia was
in
in
there.
control. Yeah,
Right. Look, there's going to be points in this game, unless I'm completely shocked, which I would love. That would be fantastic. But I'm sure there's going to be points in this game where it feels like we're not in control of the game, where Alabama is like pulling away or making us look bad. It's something, right? I just assume that's going to happen because they're such a good football team and a really well-coached football team. So I have to remind myself that this is not going to be an easy game. It's probably going to come down to the end of the game. It's probably going to come down to a play here or there. It's going to probably come down to a call here or there. The one thing that you can't say is that the SEC is going to rig this for the Alabama Crimson Tide. There's no way in hell that can happen. Listen, I know we have people in our space that go to the conspiracy theories, and I have been real damn close to being on that bandwagon a couple times. When you watch the game, you're like, there's no way in hell that's not called in from the SEC offices in Birmingham. But it doesn't do the SEC any favors to have Alabama win this football game. I think this is going to be the cleanest, straight up and down called game that Georgia's ever played against Alabama. And if there's any favoritism, it better be going Georgia's way, because the SEC would be stupid not to do that. So I'm in for a hell of a football game. I know I like to give opinions and stuff like that, but I'm not going to pretend like I am the end all be all and the know it all. I don't know how this game's going to go. I have a feeling how it might go, but I can't say for sure. And I'm nervous as hell because we have seen Georgia tested once or twice and they passed it with flying colors. We have not seen them tested like this year. And if you say they are, you're a liar. They have not been tested like this.
Dan, with that being said, prediction time. Georgia, Bama.
Oh, man, your mic goes out right when you're doing the predictions. So just wheel it, buddy. Go ahead. Start over.
We're back. Dan, it's prediction
4:00, Mercedes-Benz. Who you got?
Yeah, for me, I've been struggling with this all week. I've seen scores all over the place from people predicting what they think this is going to be. To me, this game, and I hope I'm wrong. I hope it's like early in the week, I was like, man, Bama might win this football game. But I've come back around, because what I've said all year long is that every time Georgia has been tested, every time that Georgia has been told you're not going to win, or every time, granted, they're like a 7-point favorite, but the point is that like people are questioning them and whatever. And every single time that's happened, Georgia's shown up and produced. So with that said, I'm going 35-31, and Georgia stops them with the ball to win the football game, just like the national championship game. And that's what I got, 35-31. And Alabama has the ball with a chance to win.
It's tough because I'm looking down, I'm checking Twitter. Kirby apparently came out and said about injuries, I have more answers, or I don't have a lot more answers than I had on Monday. They have not been able to do a lot, which for the 4 players that he's talking about, Brock Bowers, Loud McConkey, Raul Thomas, Tate Ratledge, not an optimistic update there that you probably would have wanted. I'm going to ride with Dan here. I think Georgia's going to win this game. I think it's going to be a low-scoring affair, relatively. I think the game plan on Bama's side is going to be to limit possessions, keep Georgia's offense off the field. But I think Georgia rallies in the end. They've taken a punch. They're going to take many more in this game, but it's going to be about responding. I think Georgia's going to win this 27-21. Tight game, but I think Georgia gets it over the top and advances to their 3rd straight college football playoff semifinal. Dan, Nick Saban's undefeated in Mercedes-Benz all time. This is like one of the first things that Georgia can do in the last 3 years, over the last 3 years. That's exciting. I think Georgia gets it done, but we will see. Hey, Tuesday, 7:30. Whoa, no. Excuse me. Monday, 7:30 next week, Georgia-Alabama post-game. We're in for a great weekend. Great slate of college football. That's Dan Kiley. I'm Harrison Reno. We'll see you back next week.
As always, go Dogs.